if we trust in our true nature, if we cultivate that sense of awareness of our true mind, everything is accomplished. We don't have to worry. We don't have to be anxious about it.
Hello, welcome to another great episode of Soul Sessions. I'm Deborah Burnt Maldonado here with Dr. Rob, and today we are going to be talking about the wonderful and insightful Laozi.
My favorite philosopher.
Yes, Chinese philosopher. And we're continuing our series on the great minds of philosophy. And so we're going to talk about the Tao Te Ching and some of the wonderful, wonderful lessons in Taoism. And before we begin, I do want to remind you, if you're watching us on YouTube, click the link in the corner of this video to subscribe to our channel. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, iTunes, and all the other podcasts hosting services, don't forget to subscribe. We are going to be continuing the series, and you want to check previous series and also our previous series on the great minds of psychology. So hope to see you in those other episodes. But today, let's talk about the Tao.
The great Tao.
The great Tao.
And we want to dedicate this to our friends from China who trace, also people that trace their origins back to China. It's a great, beautiful culture. We really appreciate their people and
many of our graduates are Chinese or Chinese descent. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the great philosophies that came out of China are just incredible. This is just a sample. But Taoism, for me personally, it was really one of those books and one of those philosophies that I always held on to, and I always keep a copy of the Tao Te Ching in my book collection. It's a great book for those of you that hike and go out into nature to take along with you, because the teachings go very well with the observation of nature, the experience of nature.
Well, I'd also like to talk about the importance of philosophy and having a philosophy and why we're talking about philosophy.
Yeah.
For me, when I was growing up in my personal development journey in my 20s and 30s, I was basically doing a do-it-yourself personal growth path. I didn't have a guide. I didn't have a coach. I was just reading books and maybe going to workshops every once in a while and trying to figure everything out, my life out for myself, being in charge of my own growth and not asking for help. And what I found is I was picking different techniques, different philosophies, and trying to mix them all together. Plus, I have my own unconscious bias around my own religious background, competing with all these ideas. And it was when I started practicing that non-dualism, the kind of having a foundation, everything started to fall together. And then the things that didn't match that philosophy fell to the side. But for those of you who are a lifelong learner and you're collecting lots of teachings and you can't get enough of it, and it's great, but you have to ask yourself, what is the underlying philosophy that ties this all together? And if you can't answer that question, you're going to feel confused.
Yeah, there's a great book called The Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley, where he compiles a lot of these different spiritual traditions, and he's trying to get at this idea that underlying all these different cultures and traditions, there's a perennial philosophy that underlies all of them. And it's very similar to the Tao, and of course he mentions a lot of
a lot of
work.
the Eastern philosophy is kind of core, and then it gets complicated the more we tie it into our Western culture, and then it gets diluted. So reading the source is always the best. That's what I learned meeting you. You were like, I never read any of those books. I read the source, and that really helped. Let's talk about who he was. And
yeah, so there's some
does he have a YouTube
controversy,
channel?
right? Laozi, the old guy, Chinese philosopher, 6th, 8th century BC, still up for debate. We'll let the scholars debate that. But he was known for as a Taoist philosopher, very kind of entrenched in the natural world. Some of the drawings and paintings that depict him, he's always in nature. He's always kind of in harmony with nature. He's always laughing, very joyful kind of almost like a trickster figure, always making fun of us.
Well, and nature is really a part of us, and it's almost like the egoless part of us. When we're in nature, we experience the egoless part of us and our natural rhythms and just the natural aspect of us that gets clouded by the ego.
Yeah, and so one of the main stories around him is that after spending some time in the city, being kind of an advisor to the city elders, Lao Tse decided to leave and retire into nature, up into the mountains. And
a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, as he was leaving the city, one of the guards at the gate stopped him and asked him, Lao Tse, I know you've been a great citizen, a great philosopher. Will you please, before you leave, write your philosophy down so that we can have it as you retire and leave us and go up into the mountains? So that's the kind of the story around the Tao Te Ching, that he then sat down and wrote the Tao Te Ching as a departing gift and then left the city for good.
So we're going to talk about some of the main principles that you can apply in your life, and no matter if you're not a Taoist, that's fine. But it's still this timeless wisdom that we can apply, no matter.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, it's really what we need to counterbalance our technology, our over reliance on rationalism and scientism. We need that connection to nature. Right, because we can deny it until we're blue in the face. We are part of nature. Our biology insists that we are nature itself. There's no getting around it. And so kind of isolating ourselves and thinking, no, we're different or we're apart from it. We can dominate it. We can master it. It's an illusion, essentially. There is no escaping it. Even outer space is nature. So it's everywhere we go. It's everything we do. We need water, air to live, to be alive. Therefore, we always need to be in contact and in harmony with nature. And this philosophy, Carl Jung was very influenced by Taoism. The yin and yang, of course, mirrors his idea of the anima and the animus.
Yes. Many people don't they may have heard these terms, and it's nice to hear where they come from and then tie it back to its origins. One of his quotes that I like, which is very Jungian, is, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." I love that quote because I think that there's such I know for me, when I was doing my own personal growth journey, it was all about the past and kind of fixing the past. And there's a time, of course, you want to process, you want to understand your conditioning, but there's a time where you have to let that go. There's a time where it's like, okay, you got to put it down and you have to let go of that past self so you can become who you were meant to be. And your past does not have to dictate that. Your past does not have to limit you. So I found that very powerful.
Yeah, and here what he means is not a pushing away, not a denial of who we are, but of letting go of that attachment to our persona, our personality, our ego, like Jung would say.
The judgments we have, the regrets we have, the shame and guilt over what we did or what happened to us. And there's only so much you can carry that and really live fully. It's like there isn't room for anything else.
Yes, to be present in the moment, in your time, in your situation, in your environment. It's a very kind of Taoist practice. Being in your natural environment, being genuine, being spontaneous. In other words, not trying to appear a certain way. That is the Tao.
I saw, it's funny, I saw a cartoon this week that had 3 booths, and one was past life readings, and there was a long line, and another booth that said fortune telling, future telling, another long line, and then the middle was meditation, and the person's like, there was no one online, that it's like present moment, anyone, and that just kind of speaks to it. We're always looking for the future, processing the past, but we're never really in the moment, and that's all we really have.
Here's another quote. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. Laozi. Again, kind of not focusing on mastering nature or the external, but looking inward, mastering yourself.
And when he says mastering others, it's not controlling others, but mastering dealing with others, right?
Here, the philosopher, just like Socrates, the philosopher acts as social commentator, social critic in a sense, almost like a satirist as well, criticizing but in a creative way.
Creative criticism.
Well, yeah, in order to help people become better, to help society become better. It's not like a tearing down for the sake of tearing down, but a way of asking questions and posing questions that can improve situations
where they're out of alignment with the truth.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so
having a misperception about their life. Yeah.
I'm sure in his time he saw cruelty. He saw armies being marched off to war, those kind of things. So this idea of trying to master others,
like be a soldier and
or trying to control others through powerful armies and governments. This was his criticism of that. That it's better to, when you see those injustices, you want to turn inward, not to ignore those injustices, but to master yourself first. In other words, to make sure that you are not acting out of those impulses as well.
Responding at the same level that the perpetrators, the people you disagree with, if you're responding on their level, you're just still in conflict. But it's like mastering yourself so you can really have that impact on someone. And I think a lot of our clients and people that listen to our podcast often ask, like, how can I change the world? What about the injustice in the world? What can we do? And you're saying right here that the mastering yourself comes first. And then you could still take action in your work, but you have to master yourself so you can do the work in the most effective way. You can influence people in an effective way. Like I said, not at that same level they're operating on, but from a higher level, like Gandhi did in India. He mastered himself so he can lead his people out of the tyranny of the British Empire taking over India. That's a great point of looking at it as this is how the typical human being is defaulted to respond to life. And he's saying, what about doing it this way? And so it's not saying that it's wrong, but it's saying this is kind of like the default, and this is like a higher level of being.
Good point. Yeah, that he's not making it wrong. He's saying knowing others is intelligence. So he's saying, it's a good thing to know others, but knowing yourself is true wisdom.
Yeah.
So that there's a higher level of intelligence.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like trying to identify the people in their lives with some kind of personality disorder, like the narcissist or this person or that person. And they feel like that intelligence is, I understand that person's default. I can work with them, but understanding yourself is actually more important. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to understand those things, but you can't stop there.
That's it.
Yeah. So let's go into some of the practices or the ideas. And let's start, I think we should start with the yin and yang, because I think that's really close to our heart as Jungians. We love the anima animus, which is the feminine masculine. And, when we talk about feminine masculine, a lot of people are like, oh, that's kind of outdated, those labels. But we're really not talking about sexual orientation. We're talking about just energies. And the yin and the yang is a great way to look at it that way. Yeah,
it often makes sense to people when we mention the yin and yang, because then they get it, that these are bigger universal concepts, archetypes, as Jung would say. Like
we both have these energies, regardless of what sex we present as. We both have the masculine, feminine, or the yin and the yang within us. And all of life does.
Yeah, so yin and yang, balancing these opposites is one of the integral parts of Taoism. Taoism recognizes the complementary forces of yin and yang, representing opposing but interconnected qualities such as light and dark, soft and hard, or passive and active. The harmony and balance between these opposites are essential for a harmonious life. Yeah, so these opposites, there's an interesting quote in the Tao Te Ching where it says, when people define beauty, they automatically define ugliness. In other
When they
words,
find good, they automatically define bad.
yes, the opposites are tied to each other. So anytime you make something good, desirable, light, you're creating its opposing element as well. Because whenever you prefer something, whenever you desire something, whenever you hold something up as ideal, you're instantly, automatically implying that there is something that is the opposite of that.
And of course, we think about positive thinking and we want to get rid of our negative thoughts, but you can't really get rid of, if you're thinking positive, you're automatically rejecting the negative. So you have to bring both parts with you. I love that. And I think with shadow work that we do, the shadow integration, it's that persona that's one way, and the shadows, the opposite, is a great way to think of people that are interested in exploring their shadow. It's the yin and yang. It's accepting both parts of ourself, that we're not just this persona. We're not this half of a person. And the more extreme that persona is, the more extreme the shadow is. And it doesn't mean we have to be milquetoast personalities, but we have to accept the opposite. We have to accept the opposite. That's a hard thing for people because we're conditioned to like only want to be good and only want to be kind and only want to present as successful. And we forget the opposite.
Yeah, I love that yin yang sign. It known now through the martial arts. Most of the martial arts schools have the sign. But if we notice, the dark element has the white circle in it, and the opposing is also true. In other words, they complement each other because there are elements of each other in each other. So let's explore the yang first.
Interconnected duality, yang. Yin and yang are not separate, but rather two aspects of a whole. They are interdependent and exist in relation to one another. Yin cannot exist without yang, and vice versa. These are seen as complementary forces that create harmony and balance. Now, my question is, can anger and peace, can they serve each other? Can they both exist in the same way? Can good and bad both be the same? Yin represents the feminine, receptive, passive aspects. It's associated with the qualities of darkness, coldness, rest, introspection, and the moon. Yin energy is calm, nurturing, and introspective. It is symbolized by the color black, and it is often depicted as the shaded area in the yin-yang symbol.
Yes, the wonderful feminine principle. In Taoism, the feminine is revered as a powerful force in nature. It's equated with water. If you notice, water is often, it seeks the lowest places. In other words, it's passive. It's not a hard kind of forceful thing, or it can be, right? And it's powerful because it says in its seeking the lowest places in nature, it serves everything. That's why it's so powerful. Water is the element of life because it takes that subservient role. Yet it can cut through stone with its patience, with its kind of consistency, its flow. It can cut through stone. It carves out the valley, it says. So that's the power of nature, that we want to be like water in essence, in our yin quality. We want to be subservient to others, but in this powerful way.
And then yang represents the masculine, active, assertive aspects. It is associated with qualities such as light, warmth, activity, extroversion, and the sun. Yang energy is energized, dynamic, and outgoing. It's symbolized by the color white and is depicted in the unshaded area of the symbol. And I see these two, like a really good example of this would be, imagine the sun being the yang, which is that active force. It's like shining down. It's moving. It's light. And then the yin is that the earth just receiving the sun. The earth is receiving it and then cultivating and creating these beautiful animals, species, plants, bugs, mountains, and like people. And it's just this, like, everything flows from that one active force, but the feminine is more that creative, like receiving and like moving it into various ways. A beautiful, beautiful balance. And it's interesting. Like the woman is the feminine, is the introvert, and the masculine is extrovert. And I think maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago, that's kind of what our roles we played as feminine and masculine, where we are the woman stayed behind. She nurtured the garden. She had the patience. She wasn't really forcing the garden to work. She was more like that introverted place, in the tribe, and then the men were going out hunting. But now everything's changed. We are in this new reality where women actually many times are more educated and make more money than men or their partner. And there's an extroversion to them too. And so we have to like drop these standard assumptions of what is a woman and what is a man, and look at ourselves as more of a yin yang, more of a balance between the two. And then noticing within ourselves what is like those forces that we're too extreme in one, we got to pull back and receive more. I noticed this in business when I started as a coach in the beginning, is like I got into too much of active energy and not receiving energy. And so you can kind of look at the yin and yang that way in your life, and like how you're creating in your life. Not waiting for the sugar daddy to come to bring you your money, and you don't have to like force it to go out there and get it. It's like, it's a balance. It's about that balance. And that's where really the creativity happens. When it's too passive, there's not enough. And then when you're too active, you get like this stress, and you want to have that balance and harmony.
Yeah, you see that balance in Jung's work. He saw this dynamic between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. And what he noticed is that the unconscious will adapt itself to whatever attitude the conscious mind takes. So that if the conscious mind is passive, then the unconscious becomes active. So
you have lots of wild dreams, and you're fighting wars in your dreams, and then at the waking life you're just kind of hanging out, and in that, and then it's almost like a symbolic of you need to step up. Yeah, like those dreams would tell you.
Yeah, but again, it's the balancing principle. That whatever is required of us individually, we're always moving towards that balance. In other words, the homeostasis of the psyche is operating just like the body operates on that principle as well, that it's always seeking that balance between opposing principles.
So when we're going through individuation in Jung's work, you start off by kind of survival mode, and you make these conditionings that are not really fully in balance. They kind of hold you together, but we get to that point in our 30s where we start to feel like constricted by those things, and that it's the force of the psyche seeking back its balance, seeking its wholeness. And that's what's beautiful about this work. And I understand how Jung was very, very influenced by it, because a lot of his work mirrors the yin and yang, the anima animus, the persona shadow, the duality, and the conscious unconscious. So I love that.
Yeah, so this dynamic balance of yin and yang are not static, fixed entities, but are in constant state of flux and change. They are mutually transforming and contain the seed of their opposite within them. As one aspect grows, the other diminishes, and vice versa. The interplay and balance between yin and yang are vital for harmony and equilibrium. That is a principle in the psyche as well, that this balance is essential. Now, what does the balance mean for us as human beings? That we
take
pay
a spa day on Fridays, get a massage, take a walk.
Yeah, but it's essentially that we pay attention to our unconscious mind. Because if we're disconnected from a half of our psyche, which is the unconscious, or a major portion of it, there can be no balance. We're lopsided. We're forever kind of isolated in our conscious rationality. And that's really what Jung saw as the main fault with modern society, that he saw that it's too much focused on the external materialism, rationality, that he said that's a lopsidedness that needs to be corrected by paying attention to the unconscious mind.
Yeah, it's like who looks outside dreams and who looks inward awakens. So another principle, well, we talk about balancing the opposites, that duality in the psyche being active. And I love that idea that it's always, it's not a static, we're not static beings. We feel like we're fixed in our conditioning, and we feel, oh, I'm living Groundhog Day every day, I'm getting the same results, but our psyche's constantly trying to find balance. And I think when we feel this dissatisfaction and we feel frustrated, that's a clue, like your psyche's seeking balance. There's not anything wrong. It means that there's something that you need to fill up within you. There's like an off balance psychic
an alarm system.
Yeah, it's like an alarm system.
So another principle is simplicity and spontaneity. Ooh. Taoism advocates simplicity and spontaneity as a way to align with the natural order. By embracing simplicity and avoiding unnecessary complexity, individuals can find inner peace and live in harmony with the Tao. Yeah, where do we find this? In nature, of course, by observing nature, by harmonizing with it, by observing it and kind of being in it, we restore ourselves. Mm-hmm. We know, like traditionally, many spas and what they used to call asylums or retreat centers were
asylums.
Yeah, even, these were like places where people were sent that were neurotic or having mental health issues. They would send them to these places that
were like spa-like.
Yeah, they were spa-like, where they could be in nature and be in contact with nature.
So now everyone goes because we're all feeling neurotic about our lives, right? People crave the spa treatments, but it's kind of like that urge to find. We're looking for that balance. I know when I get a massage, it's like, oh, this is so nice, and I don't get them enough. I'm probably going to go today, but it's about not just getting a massage, but it's about finding that balance, because our world is so hurried, and we have all this technology, all these apps, and social media, and we're always connected to something. And getting back in nature, or getting away from the noise, and shutting down the phone, shutting down the TV, shutting down the laptop, and just being with ourselves in nature is very powerful. And we need to do it more.
Yeah, so Jung noticed this principle as well. And he recommended, of course, that you don't necessarily have to go off to a spa or go for a hike every time you feel out of balance. But he says, if you think about the psyche as our internal nature, it's nature that is inside of us. So it's always there. We have our own nature. And many Eastern philosophies, of course, speak in these terms, that what we're doing is we're acknowledging, paying attention to, cultivating our true nature. That nature.
So going to our happy place.
Going to our happy place, visualizing, meditating.
Just as powerful, even to the brain, it feels like you're there. So you get the same type of endorphins flowing when you're in visualizing nature as if you're in there.
That's right. Because we are nature. We can deny it till we're blue in the face, but our bodies, our biology is nature, an expression of nature.
I like the next one, which we teach a lot to our students as well, the detachment and acceptance. If you're dealing with the opposites, it creates this attachment to one. You're going towards something and pushing something away. And the antidote to that in conditioning is to be unattached. And it doesn't mean you don't care, but you're not so needing or forcing something to happen. So Taoism encouraged detachment from desires and outcomes, and acceptance of the present moment, because we're always thinking, what is this going to get me? Where am I going to get there? And we're constantly like out of the moment. By letting go of attachments and expectations, individuals can experience greater tranquility and embrace life as it unfolds, even when you say tranquility wrong, and be non-attached, just sounding a little weird. So it's that it's caring about the result, but not worrying about it. Like worrying is like that ego, like either you're attached to it in some way, that result's going to give you something, and you're out of the moment, and it just ruins the whole experience. And when you're detached and you accept whatever comes, I'm going to try this, I'm going to accept it. And when we create art, we're drafting, a book, or creating paintings or sculptures, or music, we're in that moment of just being with the creativity and the rhythm of everything. It's just beautiful things come out. That's not non-attachment, but we're worried about, are people going to like it? Am I doing it right? We get caught up in and we don't accept. We have this expectation of what it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, Taoism influenced calligraphy, archery, all the aesthetic arts because of this acceptance and this non-attachment to outcome. It was a way of training, of doing your art and your sports. Martial arts, of course, was greatly influenced by this principle as well, where it's a principle they call Wu Wei or something like that. I'm probably Wu Wei. Effortless.
Wuwei.
Effortless action, which is kind of a contradiction, right? But again, it's the balancing of these two opposing forces. Jung talks about it as being able to hold the tension between these two opposing elements, ideas, or forces, and not being uncomfortable with it, being okay with it, accepting that things are not black or white. Right? It's a principle applied in cognitive science as well. That if your thinking is too black and white, it's a misrepresentation of situations. It's
like a quick judgment based on your past experience, which is coming from the ego and not really what it truly is. And so we look at things, we immediately have those judgments. But effortless action, it's when in martial arts, what you're doing is you're actually using your opponent's force in the battle. And so instead of you forcing, like in boxing, you're like forcing, you're actually, the person swings at you, you take that energy and you're transmitting it and changing it into something else. And they're doing the same for you. So it's almost like a dance. Like you notice when you dance with a partner, you're kind of moving and you're using each other's energy and there's a balance. When there's not a balance, you step on each other's toes. And so it really is that effortless synchronicity. When you look at nature, the water doesn't fight to go down the hill. It just glides down the hill, and the rocks don't fight the water. It just takes on the water and gets smoothed out by the water. And there's all this balance, and everything has its purpose. The balance of nature and the hierarchy of nature. There's, this is the predator and this is the predator's food. There's always that balance. There's enough back and forth. And if we look at nature, I think they don't have like a lot of animals don't have that kind of, well, we don't know, but they don't make stories up like we do as human beings about what's happening. They're kind of acceptance of the nature of life and connected to this deeper rhythm and balance.
Yeah, there's actually a scientific movement now. It's called biomimicry, where engineers observe biological insects and animals and try to replicate them in their machines, in their work. And so you have kind of a pattern that's observed in nature that you can use to create things in a scientific engineering manner.
And so when you're working, let's say you have a goal, like effortless action is about taking action without attachment. That is effortless action because you're not attached. You're not forcing things to happen. It's effortless. And also too, I think a lot of people don't do what they love. And so they're in there working hard. And when you do what you love, it is that effortless action. You're kind of in love with the experience of the action versus looking for the result. And that is really that effortless action. It just feels more aligned.
So a couple more quotes. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. This is a very famous quote. Most of you have heard it somewhere. But what he means here is that if you can explain it, if you can kind of concisely...
Which is what we're trying to do here, right?
Yes. That's not it.
Yeah.
It's pointing to it, right? It's like the finger pointing at the moon. You need the finger to show you where the moon is or to point you in the right direction. But it's not the actual experience of seeing the moon and experiencing that. The experience is that. It's a direct experience that we have to find for ourselves. The Tao cannot be taught in a classroom, essentially.
Well, it's like you get the intellectual kind of framework, but to be in the Tao, you can't really. It's ineffable. You can't really label it, and it's a beingness that doesn't have any edges to it. And we've all felt those moments where we felt that we can't explain. Like sometimes for me, it's like just watching the sunset and seeing the different colors, and you're just in awe. And it's that effortless action. You're just in there appreciating, not labeling. You're just like in this kind of Zen feeling of calm and then not calm because I'm naming it again, but it's like deeper level of just feeling connected, I think. And again, labeling, like you can't describe it.
Yeah, it goes back to this, the understanding of consciousness. And so what the Tao is it's another name for that ineffable principle of consciousness, of awareness. Meaning it is not the objects that we're looking at or that we are experiencing, and not the feelings and not the ideas, but the ground where these ideas are experienced, the ground where the objects of the world and people of the world are experienced. So anytime you name it a thing or a form, you're mislabeling it, because it's not the name or the form. It is the ground of those things, the ground of being. Therefore, it is not the real Tao.
It's not the thing.
Yeah, it's not it's not the Tao.
So another thing with the Yin Yang symbol is a symbolism of the Tao, and it's also known as I can't pronounce it. Tai Jitu.
Watch your language.
Visually representing the concept of the yin yang. It features a circle divided into two halves, one black, one white, and a smaller circle, the opposite in between. And it symbolizes the interconnectedness and interdependence of yin and yang. By understanding and embracing the principles, it helps you strive for balance, adaptability, harmony, and all aspects of life, including personal well-being, relationships, and the natural world. I feel that too in relationships. There's always like a balance that we're seeking with our partners, with our friends, with our family. It's that you hear the story, I do everything for you and no one does anything for me. Or, you're withholding because that person's not giving you something. And it's like, how do we get into that rhythm where it's this constant flow? And I remember a couple of years ago, probably like 10 years ago, I asked you, I'm like, what is this? We're always kind of like, he's always thinking of me and I'm always thinking of him, and we're always kind of making sure we're all both happy. I said, what is that? And you said, oh, that's called love. I said, okay. But it's the Tao, really. It's that kind of sensing your partner, what they need, and being there for them when they need to receive and you need to receive. And there's just harmony, and it's very unconscious. It's not something that you're like, oh, a checklist like they used to teach in the couples, like you did 5 things, so your partner gets points for taking out the garbage. It's no, you have to find that within yourself. And when you find the balance within yourself and find a partner who's found that balance within themselves, that is able to receive and able to give in a very equal way, that's really where the beautiful relationship has that rhythm.
Yeah.
Also in business with clients and your team, giving back and giving and sharing and being able to receive. There's sort of a balance, a Tao to business and a Tao to just our life and health, what we're doing with what we're eating, and just our time. Where are we spending our time, and how do we balance that? I think we need an outer life, but we also need the inner life. So if you're pulled out too much externally, you get sick sometimes, right? You get a cold, you get run down, and you're forced to retreat. And so it's that balance is always seeking within ourselves.
So highly recommended book, the Tao Te Ching. We'll post some links to some recommendations on books and videos. But we see in this philosophy that influenced Carl Jung's work tremendously, that need for balance, that seeking of harmony, which is so missing in today's world. So kind of we invite you to think about it, to practice it, to explore these ideas, and to give us some feedback. Let us know how it goes. We know Carl Jung used the I Ching a lot in his personal life. When he had to make big decisions, he would use the I Ching, which is a divinatory practice where you can either throw some sticks or use some coins and get some feedback on
your current state. It's not a fortune telling, it's more about reflective of the energies that are surrounding you right now unconsciously.
Yeah, maybe we'll post some links to that too. It's an interesting practice. But one of the last quotes we want to leave you with is, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. this is the idea, right? That if we trust in our true nature, if we cultivate that sense of awareness of our true mind, everything is accomplished. We don't have to worry. We don't have to be anxious about it. We stay, of course, focused and we pay attention, but we're not attached to results. We're letting go of kind of the rational need to understand everything or to control everything, which is a weird concept for most of us in modern society. In modern society, it's all about control. It's all about prediction. Here we use those tools. Yeah, we can use those tools, but in this creative way. And that's the key to practicing the Tao in this modern world.
And you could start today by just thinking about, what are you anxious about? Like, when you get up in the morning, is there kind of an urgent thing that you got to check your phone? You got to, work out. You got to talk to your boss. You have to, all this work to do today. There's this kind of like conditioning that we get in the West of do. And just take a moment and just set the intention that everything is accomplished, that you're just going to be patient. Everything will be accomplished. Take the time to balance yourself, and of course not too much where you're just late, hanging out and being like, I'm not going to do anything. Everything in balance. You want the active force, but it has to be balanced with patience. And you'll find that you're less stressed throughout the day, that most of the stress, I talked about this in one of my weekly wisdom videos that you could see here on YouTube. It's that when we're so attached and anxious, it means that we're pushing away something. So with the yin and yang, we're like rejecting half of the energy. And it's like almost like holding a beach ball under the water and that pressure of it wanting to come up. And it doesn't feel comfortable. You want to feel a flow. You want to feel that balance. And it's not to say that you have that all the time, or when you're out of balance, it's a bad thing. It's just to know when you are out of balance. It's like you said, that alarm clock, the little alarm system going off saying, check back in, and it's fine. Like, don't judge it. But judge yourself when you're in those moments. And then the more you can find that inner rhythm, the outer life will reflect the outer rhythm.
Excellent.
Yeah. So join us next week for another great philosopher. We have more to come. But in the meantime, before you go, don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube here in the corner. And if you are listening to us on Spotify, iTunes, or all those other wonderful podcast services, before you end today, make sure you subscribe so we can deliver you more of these episodes to inspire your mind and lighten your life.